there? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to kick us off, and then once we start the intros, I'm going to run and get a battery for my wireless mouse. It died. This morning has been a really, really great morning.
For me too. I don't know.
It's in the water.
And then we'll jump right into the interviews. Wendy will be interviewing. She'll be the lead on the interview today. And then because we don't really have a whole lot of questions in this 30-minute interval, also kind of just ask questions, follow-up questions as they come as well.
Okay.
So we'll start off the intros. We'll introduce ourselves on the RIDE team, and then we'll kick it off to you for introduction as well.
Sure.
My name is Jermaine Curtis. I work as the charter school specialist here at RIDE, and I'm serving as the team lead for this renewal site visit team. And I'll pass it off to Megan.
Good morning. Hi, Melissa. I'm Megan Tupa. I'm a consultant with Schoolworks. And I'm here to help support the RIDE team with this site visit. I'm a career educator over 20 years in the field and have been doing this kind of work across the country for over 15 years, all different types of schools, locations. I'm a special educator by training and spent 6 years also in the Chicago public schools, where I oversaw all the district's special education services for charter schools and the district's early childhood special education services. So I'm coming to you this morning from Colorado in my little square here, but excited to be able to come to Rhode Island in this way and excited to learn from you this morning. So thanks for having me. Wendy, sorry.
Yes, it's a small group, so I know the intros are a little easier this time around. Good morning, Melissa. Wendy Wallace. I work at RIDE in the Office of College and Career Readiness, and I manage the state's largest career pathways initiative called Prepare RI. And I also manage the charter school program grant. And so it's really wonderful to meet you, and I'm looking forward to this interview.
To meet you too. Nice to meet you all. I think it's my turn, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so as you already probably know, I'm Melissa Cornejo. I started working at BACS and Blackstone Academy 2012. So I've been here almost 10 years now. And I've been pretty much in the finance and accounting bookkeeping field for about 25 years now. And as you probably already know, I do all the financial stuff. So
great, wonderful.
So nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you as well. My husband's a former accountant, so I can appreciate the work and the level of details that goes into that. He switched over to finance, so now he's a financial advisor, and he's happier in that sense.
Yeah, right.
Wonderful. So I just have a few questions for you.
Sure.
All right. So the first one is, how does the school work with the board in their process of providing fiscal oversight?
Okay, so basically at each board meeting, I provide financial reports, so balance sheet, statement of revenues and expenses. And we go through it and we discuss if there's, anything out of the ordinary. And then, the discussion usually takes it, on its own from there, and we go into discussion. And a couple of times a year, we pass extensive budgets. And as you probably already know, in the normal, as I say, land of accounting, there's not UCOA. It's just a normal chart of accounts. So because of UCOA, we really go extensively to make it as transparent as we can, because for some people, budgets can be a little hard to understand, especially if you're not in that type of field and you're not used to hearing certain terminology or just certain words. So we try to make it as transparent as possible, especially due to the fact that there's UCOA. But we do also have, which helps a lot on our board, we have a couple of people who are in the accounting field. So they do understand that level. They do understand, the financial aspects, not just the educational aspects. So they always ask questions, which is great because I don't feel so alone, right? Because someone understands the terminology, and that's great. And, they ask a lot of questions. And, sometimes if like, not, I don't want to say like out of the ordinary things come up, but if things come up that, we see coming in the future, or larger purchase items, say, there's been times where we've had long executive sessions about certain things like the building purchase, and things along that lines. And I guess just, Carolyn and I also, we work very closely together on the budget. So we go through it in detail and present it to the board. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
That's really helpful. Do you give reports at every board meeting?
Yeah, every board meeting I give a financial report, and it's basically a summary with like the balance sheet. We discuss the cash flow. We'll bring up at that point if there's anything out of the ordinary, which generally, I mean, there hasn't been. And we just run by, like if we're on point as far as the revenues and expenses, what we originally had anticipated from our budget. And we try to just keep staying on track as the year goes.
Okay.
What would be an example of something out of the ordinary?
So, so we actually purchased a house 2-3 years ago. So that was something because we were very limited for space. So there was a house for sale directly across the street from the school. So we purchased that. So that's an example of, we have obviously, have board discussion, get them involved to just view, just cash, is this going to work? Is it feasible for the school? It's not unreasonable. And then another example would be, we just actually bought the school building during the pandemic. That opportunity came up instead of renting to be the landlord. And we thought it would be a great opportunity for the school because, just to keep the location where it is, you never know what can happen if the building was sold to someone else. So, yeah, so I think those are the examples I have in mind that I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there particular financial or faculty goals on which the board is currently focused on?
I mean, well, currently I would say the COVID, I mean, just it will bring tears to my eyes to talk about going through the pandemic. Sorry, but it was very challenging, I'll just say. And it was just very nice to see the unity and how everybody, no matter if you were on the financial end or educational end, everybody pulled together for the sake of the students to make things happen, to work quickly, to come up with a lot of, more electronic processes, and, just to get distance learning going. So I think that was one of the, more recent current goals. And the board was very active in that. We had board meetings throughout the whole pandemic virtually. And it was just nice to see how everybody, it was challenging for everybody because everybody had their own unique circumstances, and everyone was pretty much at one point, right, strictly remote until, you kind of got through that phase. But I would have to say that I think that was the biggest goal besides the recent school building purchase.
And can you talk a little bit more about what the purchasing process looks like? Just thinking through, does the board have to sign off on that, or is it who has to sign off on paperwork for large purchases?
So the board authorizes Carolyn, the executive director. We meet, and like, for example, for like the school building, we met ahead of time and the board approved, we voted on it and approved with but there's always certain limitations. It's not just, you could sign off on whatever, like they're very involved in making sure that there's limitations and amounts, things to that nature. Rules, I guess you could say, not just, yeah, sign. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm thinking about particularly with the pandemic, like you mentioned, if, you have to kind of respond pretty quickly. And so do you have to wait until the next board meeting, or is there like a different process if it's outside of the board meetings? What does that look like?
I mean, the board would definitely have to approve and pass that. There's no like, I mean, I don't think we had a case where like the school building, it was already like approved by the board. So there wasn't like an occasion, but no, the board would have to meet and definitely approve. A certain situation like that, yeah.
Yeah, so if we had to buy like a bunch of laptops, for example, they would have to.
Well, and I mean, generally, if you're speaking like in general terms of like, you know, for example, if we know we need so many Chromebooks for the following school year, that's all passed during the time of the budget. So when
Right.
we go through the budget, we go through each line item like individually. And like there's the, you know, technology hardware line item, which would include Chromebooks. And that's where that would be explained, you know, the reason why we came up with this amount, you know, it's not just a bunch of things broke, like technology related. It's actually like certain amount of Chromebooks for new students, for example. And that's when the board will review and pass the budget.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And what is, oh, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, is there a threshold for what when you need approval for, or for when you can just spend?
What do you mean, like as far as like something outside of the budget that like wasn't approved?
Like the emergency laptops or Chromebooks, right? Like, is there a certain threshold where you or school leadership could just spend without board approval?
I mean, I don't think we've ever reached that case. But again, like we would, if we had to make any revisions, we actually revise the budget too. And then we pass it. We usually, I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. We actually usually have two budgets approved during the year. One's like the original budget where our original numbers and anticipations for the year, and then we revise it as we see foreseeable changes, and then they approve it again.
Okay.
But generally, like once the revised budget's passed, there's usually nothing like that would, I guess you could say, go over those thresholds, those numbers.
Mhm. That's helpful. And who's a part of the process of revising the budget?
The whole board, the whole entire board.
Before you bring it to the board?
Oh, before I bring it to, so Carol and I sit down with the budget. I mean, I generally go through patterns first because it's easier since I do the UCOA.
Mhm.
You know, I go through like previous year's patterns to see like the trends and how certain, you know, inflation wise, see how certain expenses went up. And then I sit down with her and we go through it to make sure, you know, this maybe something that I don't know that came up, you know, on the education end. And then she, you know, she'll tell me and we'll talk about like any foreseeable changes, any future occurrences we think that might happen that might affect or impact the numbers.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay.
Megan, did you have a question? No? Okay. Is there anything else that you want to share with us regarding finances and your work?
I mean, I would like to say, like, not to sound too prideful, I guess, but I want to say, like, you know, it has been the past 3 years, I think we really have met our biggest financial goals. And not even because of the pandemic in itself. It's just, you know, the purchase of the house. We were able to, you know, do the school building during a pandemic. And again, you know, just to like everyone work really is just so great and unique in their own professions and how it all just comes together and everyone just works together at Blackstone. It's pretty amazing to me. And I think that's why I've been here so long, because it's great to work somewhere where, you know, everyone has the same passion in mind and everyone cares about the students enough to try to, you know, just always come together and keep things going successfully, not just, you know, do it, but do it, you know, with everything you've got to make sure that it works in the long run too, not just now. So
Exactly.
Yeah. I do have a question, actually.
sure.
Sorry. What's the role of the finance committee then?
The finance committee, so we would meet, I mean, during the pandemic, we didn't meet much, but we would generally meet, you know, when we had like, I don't want to say like the big things to talk about, but like the budget, for example. And then the finance committee, we would sit down with them first and go through anything and get, you know, our insurance company involved if they needed to for certain things, like the attorney. But because of the pandemic, the finance committee really didn't meet much. It was just the board meetings, but the finance committee was very actively involved as well. And it is, you know, members, it's a few members from the board. So it's the same people on the board, but it was basically just, you know, meeting with them first previous to the pandemic. And then kind of just getting any feedback from them, was any oversight that they might see that maybe, you know, or myself didn't, and bring that to the table.
How does the information, and I understand it was different during the pandemic. I mean,
Right.
everything was different during the pandemic.
Right.
How does the information that you bring to the finance committee differ from what would be presented to the larger board?
I mean, we would sit down and just pretty much go through the same information, but if they had questions in detail, like, I mean, well, I can't say it's really different because I would do that for the board too. Like if I had my laptop with me and they asked me for something, I could go on your color and I'd show them, the thousands of pages if they wanted to, so they could see like, deeper in the UCOA code. But I guess maybe because like, the people on the finance committee, they are in like finance professions, you could say. So maybe that's more like, I don't know how to explain it, but more like,
Consultant.
I want to say detailed time, but more time like when you're sitting with like just two people versus the whole board, you know what I mean? You might go, I don't know, like further deeper into something, or not deeper, but I don't know, maybe they'll like think of more, I don't know, more questions this time, but I mean, it's the same people that are on the board, so they generally would ask those questions either way during the board meeting or the finance committee. I
Yeah,
don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know how to like,
no, that's good. I
Yeah.
understand. Thank you.
Super helpful. Thank you. Any more questions, team?
Yeah, I do. I just want to ask about any development work that's done or grant funding that comes in.
to be more detailed, you mean like
Yeah.
related to grants, or
What,
like
what
what
are
do you
your,
mean?
where
by-
does your, I think I saw in your budget that you have nearly $1 million that came in grant funding.
Okay, so
What are the revenue
you want to know
sources?
how much?
What are the revenue sources? I don't.
Oh,
need
the revenue?
those. Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, we get like the CRP grants through Excel grants, but it's all directly, like not directly sent to us, but like the CRPs. I don't know if you want to know the process itself, but like I bill them, and then like the grants. I'm trying to think what grants we had last year. I think it was just CRPs, couple private grants.
okay,
And then of course the COVID, the ES, the ESSER funds.
okay.
But
Okay,
we
so
bill
some
out
of them are
those.
state, some of them are state. So the grants are also, it's state aid, and then the grants include also are different from state aid, the way you have. them.
Correct, and then we get like the state
Okay.
aid, the local aid, which
Gotcha.
that's like state aid numbers are predetermined, so are the CRPs. So it's nothing like that we control, like we kind, you know what I mean, like that we
Gotcha.
the determine numbers. Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to understand how you kind of divided those. So the CRP.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know, I just
Oh,
wanted
I'm
to
sorry.
understand
Yeah.
kind of how they were bucketed. What was
I
state
see.
aid
Yeah.
versus grants?
There's different CRP. So there's like Title 1, Title 4, IDEA, and they all have like they all serve specific
Yeah.
specific areas, special ed stuff. Yeah.
And those are
yeah.
under grants, not state aid.
Correct. Those are separate under the grant revenue, right?
Those are under
And then I think probably the top part of the budget that you saw, that's like the state aid, the local aid, I mean, interest from the bank accounts. We have several bank accounts because we want to make sure the
Sure.
money was federally insured. And then Medicaid too was another source of
State
income.
aid.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
then other, what's other?
Other revenue, I'd have to look exactly to see what. So other revenue, I mean, I don't think we have anything classified as other, do we? Oh, so I'm sorry. So other grants, we get some small grants here and there. Just private grants that we apply for, but those are just, they're very small. So that like total is all accumulative, it's all combined. Yeah. And then we get the food service, but you probably notice it's zero because at this point with COVID, there hasn't been any food service revenue coming in or like lunch money going. Yeah.
Right.
What about private donations?
Private donations, as far as like what kinds you mean? Like we do have a bar grant,
Yeah.
and it funds certain like certain educational aspects in areas, but that's generally the only like private one. And then we have, individual donations. So some people just donate for the cause. During the pandemic, they might donate to help families. We had a COVID like family fund, things of that nature, or just general donations and in general to help Blackstone.
And that's reflected in the other?
No, that's reflected in individual donations at the top.
Okay.
The only section that I see that says other revenue is the grants that I spoke about. There's some private grants that are all combined in there, and they might be restricted. They might cover certain areas or certain programs, I should say, where others might not be maybe unrestricted and cover
Got it.
basic.
Okay, that
Mhm.
helps.
Does that
I just wanted to kind of wanted to get the big picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did that help to clarify or?
It is helpful. No, it wasn't a quiz or anything like that.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure I explained it because at first I didn't know, like, I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, it's just different states and different schools have different
I
ways to
see,
bucket
true.
and
Right.
ways
So you're trying to
money's
get
coming in.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's
Yeah, no,
especially,
I would say, well, to kind of sum that up on that, like, the major percent of our revenue sources are, it's state aid, which is determined. It's nothing that, like, I guess is driven from us, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not
Yeah.
like it's predetermined for all schools in Rhode Island. So, but that's like the biggest focus. The local aid is we bill out to the districts that we are, which is Central Florida, Pawtucket, and Providence. We bill out those students to those districts, and there's, again, that dollar amount is like a flat rate determined by the state. It's not us.
it's your enrollment count, which is your tuition.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
which you get as a public entity.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I and then the state aid is for low income,
Mhm.
I get it, generally speaking. But you do have a
Okay.
fairly large budget for
Right.
for your student enrollment count,
Right.
which is good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's all I have, Wendy. I'm done now. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Megan.
Oh, no problem.
All right, so I'm going to toss it over to Jermaine to ask the final question.
Okay.
All right, Melissa, I have a fun question for you.
Oh boy. Fun.
All right, this is the fun one.
Okay.
If you had a magic wand, this is my magic wand. It's a remote right now.
Ooh.
But I know, like pretty. If you had a magic wand and could change anything about the school, right? And this is not like a judgmental question or whatever.
Yeah.
Parents loved it, the kids loved it, and I think the teachers loved it as well. Think about it from your seat. If you had a wand and you could change anything about the school, what would it be?
UCOA.
But not having to do it every year?
UCOA. Yep. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand like the background and the purpose of UCOA. I really do. Like, I do understand because, it is important, I think, in certain aspects and certain areas that you do want to get full detail, right? And you do want to be able to drill down to certain specific areas. But at the same time, I feel like it's very time consuming, And not that I'm lazy or anything, like, and I don't,
Right.
I don't want to do it, but it just feels like, like the time spent on that is just very time consuming, and it just like, is it really necessary? I hate to say that.
Necessary. Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty. I mean, after almost 10 years, I have to admit though, it kind of grew on me, so I'm used to it. But in the beginning, and I know like a lot of newer business managers, they actually call me because they get very stressed out, and I just feel like it kind of like pushes people away sometimes. Like if you don't stick with it and kind of like get it, you know what I mean? And like I've had quite a few, actually one within the last month or so actually give me a call, very stressed, like wanting to just walk away because they can't deal with the UCOA. It's just the level, it could get pretty intense if you don't. You got to pick it up, and once you pick it, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I've been dealing with it with 9 years, so now it's just like it's there, and whatever.
Yeah, right.
But,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
We really value it. A crazy morning for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
We were able to make it work, and we know how much it is as far as like how much of an impact it is for folks to take time out of their day and what they do day to day to spend about 30 minutes answering questions. But you are helping out a great deal by being a part of this process. And we just want to say that we value your time and we thank you for making time for us.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks,
Thank you. It's
Melissa.
nice meeting you all.
Have a
All
good
right,
day.
you too. You too.
Have a good one.
Team, you
Take
too.
care.
Bye-bye. Team, since we're back to back, if you take about 2 minutes or something like that, Carolyn will get ready and she'll be here at 10.
Great.
Ready to roll. Your questions are in your Megan. The questions are in your copy as well as the master copy of the interview questions.
Okay, I
bank.
see them. Thank you.
Right.
Great. See you soon.
See you soon. Hi, we meet again. I think you're on mute.
Oh yes, hi. Hi
Debbie.
everyone.
Hello.
See you again.
Nice to see you again. How's oh my gosh, how is everyone's day coming along?
It's all right. It's
It's okay.
started off a little crazy.
That means it'll only get better. It can only get better at this point.
Absolutely. That's the right thing. Absolutely.
Sometimes it seems like morning routines on a Wednesday are much harder than any other day.
Well, it's the hump day. It's the hump day of the week. It's, where you have to kind of pick yourself up and then continue towards the end of the week. You guys got it.
Yeah, not not the beginning of the week, coming off of a weekend and it's not yet almost Friday. It's like, it's that in between where it's just like, man. I know, we'll try. All right, so we'll kind of jump but I think you've heard us give introductions. But I don't think we've heard like you give an introduction.
Much from me. Okay.
Yeah, because
All right.
last time we were there, last time was yesterday, right? With the
Mm-hmm.
translation. Was it?
Yes.
You?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we really didn't need the translation, so we didn't really hear much from you. So so we get some time with you today.
Of course.
If you don't mind, just if you would like, we could do our intros. Or if you
Up to you guys.
well,
Completely up to
we'll
you.
just do a short one just to
Perfect.
not break protocol. My name is Jermaine Curtis, work as a charter school specialist at RIDE, and I'm the lead for this renewal site visit team. Wendy.
Wendy Wallace, I work at RIDE as well. I sit in the Office of College and Career Readiness, managing our Prepare RI initiative for the state, and I am also the Charter School Program Grant Director. Megan.
Hi, I'm still finishing breakfast because I'm out in Colorado, so I'm 2 hours behind you guys. But I'm Megan Tupa. I'm a consultant for Schoolworks and helping to support RIDE on this charter school visit to Blackstone. I'm a career educator and a special educator by training. I've done this type of work around the country for about 15 years. And also spent some time in the Chicago Public Schools as an administrator, where I oversaw the district's early childhood special ed services and charter school services. So happy to be here and get to talk to you this morning in this capacity. So yeah, and would love to hear from you about
Absolutely.
yourself.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
So basically, my name is Debbie. I'm an alum of Blackstone Academy. I graduated back in 2008. My siblings also came here. So my family and I have been very close to Blackstone, and it's exciting to work here for them. Some of the things that I do, so my official title is the administrative coordinator, but I do a lot of things around the school. So as you saw yesterday, I help out with translation. I also do admissions, which is a year-round thing. I also have an advisory of students that I got 4 years ago. So they're seniors right now. So I'm getting ready to graduate them, getting ready to see if they pass their level 4 portfolio, their senior research paper, their senior project. I help out with the lunch program. I help out with marketing and branding. I help out with a little bit of parent engagement as well with the translation, the robocalls, data management as well for the school. So I have my hands pretty much in a lot of areas at the school.
Nice. And you, okay, it's coming back to me now. So you during the lottery.
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, during the lottery. See what happens when everyone has their mask on. You know, you don't get a real sense of like who's who and people's faces. And I'm not a names person. I'm more so of recognize face better than names. All right, it's coming back to me now. So we have just a couple of questions around recruitment and enrollment. And for this interview, Megan will be the lead for the interview.
Okay.
But as she asks questions, there might be follow-up from both Wendy and I. So, we might kind of chime in a little bit with questions as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll kick it off to Megan.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction and congratulations on your seniors. That's exciting.
I know, I'm very excited. This is a group that I've seen grow and flourish over these past 4 years. So it's amazing to see that firsthand.
Yeah, great. I'd like to just start with, can you speak to the school's attrition rate and the data that you use to calculate or determine that, please?
Yeah, of course. So we have a very low attrition rate. I would say maybe 1 or 2%. And the reasons for that would probably be transfer out of the state of Rhode Island or transfer out of the districts that we serve, which is always unfortunate because we get a lot of parents that really want their students to stay here. However, obviously we can't have them here. So that's always sad to see. And some of them also move out of the state. And also some of them during the freshman year are kind of no call, no shows in a way. So we have always like 2 freshmen that kind of say, yeah, they fill out the paperwork. We're going to come to BACS, they come to orientation, and then there's a no call, no show. There's no one here. We call the parents, no one picks up. Eventually they pick up and they're like, oh, my child is at such and such school. So that's typically how we transfer students out. Well, the main reasons why they transfer out. They do, if they are current students of the school, they do have to, submit their official transfer documentation. They have a meeting with Kylene to kind of talk about the reasons why they're transferring out, most of which is out of district or out of state, unfortunately.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just a couple follow-up questions.
Yeah.
For those that are not out of district, out of state, what reasons have you been given?
Typically, so if the student, for example, wants to go into more a career and technical type of school, like obviously we don't have that here. We can always help direct students to organizations and people that can help them out, but we don't have those services. So it's kind of like the family with the advisor, with the student, and kind of make the choice to like, okay, if your student wants to be a nurse, Rhina might be the better choice for you, or maybe Davies in Lincoln might be the better choice for you.
Okay, great, thank you. And then also, just to understand the, I'm not gonna get the whole thing right, the no call, no show, is that what you called them?
Oh, I call them that, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
well, no, I just wanted to get, yeah, I understand who they are. I just wanted to make sure I was referring to it, so we were talking about the same kids. So those are freshmen who enroll but don't ever come. And they're transfers because you technically enrolled them in your system, is that right? Because they came to the orientation and,
Yes.
okay.
Mhm.
So they officially have to be transferred out because they were officially enrolled, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Do they have to do an interview, an exit interview?
Typically, we, after multiple times of calling the family, because those students have never come to the school, it's mostly a phone call that's enough information to provide us enough information as of to why they're transferring out, even though they've technically never been to the school except for orientation or if they came to the open houses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And how long do you wait until you unenroll them? Like if you can't contact?
Well, if this was not a COVID year, so COVID really threw a wrench
Let's
in
go not
everything.
COVID because let's go not COVID year.
Not COVID year.
Yeah.
I give them about 1 to 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I know that sometimes people travel out of the country during the summer and they can't contact us. I know that some of those travels take about a month for our families because they actually have their kids out of school, so they go back and travel out of the country. So I give them about 1 to 2 weeks. And then, they are withdrawn from the school. And then I look into our wait list and start calling families that are excited to attend Blackstone.
Okay. So you go to the top of the wait list then?
Yes,
That was going to be
absolutely.
my next question. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, great. And then just one more question. So
Mhm.
for students who do leave or withdraw, is there an exit interview process?
Yes. So they
Okay.
have to fill out the paperwork that they get from the main office, and then the families have to meet with Kylene to kind of discuss the reasons as to why they are moving schools or switching schools.
Okay. And is that
Mhm.
interview or that meeting, is it parents? Is it a student interview or is it both?
Both
And is it together or separate?
together.
Okay.
Mhm. Unless the student is in school and Kylene happens to see them, walking in the hallway, then she'll just, check in with them.
Okay.
I mean, students really feel comfortable just knocking on Kylene and Carolyn's doors, like, hey, this is what's going on. So it's very welcoming for them just to have that conversation as well.
Right. Just like an informal.
Yeah, informal and official.
But like the
thing,
formal meeting is like a family type.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then what type of information do you share with the board about student attrition, student retention? I'm going to kind of go into the broader, so both the attrition and retention, and then enrollment. I'm also going to ask about recruitment too.
Okay.
So that was bad practice of asking 4 questions in 1 question, but tackle one at a time if you'd like, and then we can move to the other ones.
So you said attrition,
Start
enrollment,
with attrition, enrollment,
recruitment,
retention.
Retention. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna do recruitment, but we can bucket that one separately because that's kind of a different thing.
Okay. Typically, I kind of defer that to Carolyn and Kylene with like the numbers that I have. So they're kind of the ones that kind of talk to the board more than I do.
Okay.
So they can view like our enrollment policy and procedures. Of course, they have to approve that. Any changes that we do to that, they have to read and approve. But in regards to the data, that's more Carolyn and Kylene.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they do the reporting, the front, like kind of front face. You keep track of stuff. They talk to the board. Okay.
Yes.
You let them face the board.
Oh, absolutely.
Smart lady. Can you speak to recruitment strategies at all, or is that okay? Okay, yeah. What are some of the recruitment strategies that the school uses?
So we have a charter network. So we have typically every year we have a charter open house for all of the residents of Rhode Island, and that's typically in January. This year was via Zoom, but typically it's in person at Times Square. So that's a great way to recruit everyone. It's not just people in the 10 charter schools, it's just everyone in Rhode Island. So that's one way. I also have great communication with local schools as well. So I always send them our current Blackstone Academy information, our flyers. If we have a video of like student experiences that I think that, their students would benefit from, I send that to them. In a non-COVID situation, I attend high school fairs in Providence, Central Falls, and Pawtucket. So that definitely opens the doors to get more students in. And it's just kind of reaching out to people.
Okay, great.
Sending them mail, emails, visiting the schools.
So I know you all enroll from 3 communities, right?
Yes, we do.
Do you have more demand from one community over another?
I would say because we've been around for about 19 years. I think this is in our 19th year, 18th year. We have historically accepted students from Pawtucket and Central Falls. So they are the ones that know us the best. And Providence is newer in that regard. So that's been the community that, we also get a lot of applicants, but not as much as Providence and Central Falls, because we have that connection with those cities where word of mouth, parents tell their siblings or their cousins about Blackstone. So then we have parents that come to the school to apply.
Okay, great. And then in terms of the applications you receive from communities, are there, how do I want to say this? Are there gaps in applications that you receive from certain communities, or do you receive, applications from certain demographics of each community that, you know, versus not other demographics, or is it really widespread, or is it unclear? Do you target certain students in your recruitment efforts, or,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I'm just trying to get kind of a picture of what you know.
Of course.
If you know.
Mhm. Well, I mean, a lot of our paperwork, admissions paperwork, is done in Spanish and English, because a lot of our students are bilingual. We also have Portuguese as well, so the application is in Portuguese. Some
Okay.
of our things are in Portuguese as well because we serve a big Cape Verdean community in Pawtucket. We are trying to reach out more to the Asian communities in Providence. That's like something that's in the works. We have a few, but we want to increase our numbers. We want to invite more of the community into our school.
Great.
We have a lot of like it's a very diverse school.
Yeah.
So a lot of Latinos, a lot of African American students, a lot of students also from Africa that came here a few years ago. Just a very diverse,
Okay, great.
group of school. Yep.
Thank you. Wendy or Jermaine, do you guys have additional questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
I know that you talked about like what you guys do as far as like looking at attrition rates. But can you talk a little bit more about how you all analyze the attrition rates to make sure that there are populations that are like disproportionate? Because I know that you all serve, you guys serve Providence, Central Falls, and Pawtucket. But how do you all analyze to make sure that the students, and I know that the rate is very low. Like if there were, like you all have a really big Latinx community. And so how do you guys know that all of the students that aren't leaving are, you know, all white students, so all African American students? Like, how do you guys kind of analyze that to make sure that you guys are good on those fronts?
That's a great question. So because the number is really low, we typically find out very quickly if a student is planning on leaving. So the advisor or the parent reaches out to myself or Kylene or the main office. So that's when we start checking in with them, trying to make sure, you know, what are the reasons for your transferring, besides, you know, the official transfer out meeting with Kylene. But in the time I've been here, I've never heard of anyone being, you know, uncomfortable or felt that they were being underserved or felt that they were being singled out because of their race. Everyone.
That would be something that you would expect for families to like tell you during the exit interview.
Yeah, what are the reasons for you? Why are you transferring? Like, what could have we done better? I mean, like I said, most of it is out of district, so unfortunate, or out of state. So the parents are sometimes sad to send their kids out of Blackstone, but we can't serve them if they're going to Florida. That happened to one of my advisees this year. Loved the family. The mom applied for her daughter to come here as well. So I think she was very happy with the school to kind of, you know, submit that lottery application to have her daughter attend the school. But we keep the information in Power School. We also have, you know,
that was going to be my next question, as far as like, you know, how do you guys track that to then go kind of look at trends?
We have that information in our student information system in Power School. Kylene also has that information in her exit interviews with the students. And I also keep track of it like on a spreadsheet because I have to keep track of the numbers of the students that we accept from the different districts. So if a student withdraws from Central Falls, I have to go check out what my percentage is there, and then go to the wait list for that. So we have different methods of tracking this data.
Great. Let me just take a look here. All right. I think that was probably the biggest, I think that was the biggest question that I had. Nice. Great. And retention policies, are there any, I can't remember, is that a part of your enrollment policy as well?
Retention as in a student is repeating the grade, or a student decides to stay from 9th grade to 10th grade and they continue on.
Yeah. Like, policies around that.
The students come back to the school.
Yeah, and how many students would you say, like a percentage of students you would say, I guess I could like minus and say 98 because of the attrition, but like on average, like how many students decide to stay at the school per year?
I would say 98%.
And is that
just like how you said? Yeah.
Is that consistent? Because I know if attrition is low, there might be some grades where you don't see any attrition at all, right? So
absolutely.
So do you guys typically kind of see like the 100% more than or do you guys think that every year you guys typically lose at least 1 or 2% of kids?
I think every year is different. Thinking without the pandemic and
Right.
keep, because that's another situation in itself. For the most part, students that do that are promoted to the next year continue staying here. And if, other students are not promoted to the next year, they still stay here as well. So because we always work really well with the families and the students to make sure that we're giving them the support. If students move or decide that they want to withdraw from the school, it would typically be 9th grade or 10th grade, perhaps. Very rarely do we see it in, junior to senior year.
Right. Which makes sense.
Transitions.
Right? Yeah.
Because they've already been here, they've already, done their portfolios, they've already started their external learning skills. So they're already kind of in deep in regards to that. So I don't think that they want to just jump out of that. But for the most part, I think it's very it depends on year to year, but it's not a lot of people that withdraw because they don't find that this school is suitable for their needs and for their academic expectations. Yeah,
and that was going to be my next question, but you answered it. As far as on the other end of retention, if a student is retained in a grade, do you see that as a reason for kids leaving as well? But you said that even if a student is retained, they typically tend to stay at the school.
Absolutely. And I find that because, we work really well with the students. We are able to kind of create a game plan with the students and get the parents on board. So everyone knows that the students are supported. So it's just kind of getting them to reach their goal so that they can get those credits by summer school or during the school year, or if they're enrolled in another course that they need to take. So there are plans in motion for those students.
Cool. All right, that's all I had. It's good to know some of the examples of ways that you guys analyze this information, as well as track them to make sure that even if you're not used to seeing trends at least you're putting yourself in a position where if there are trends, you guys would be able to clearly document, you guys would be able to clearly identify them because you've documented when folks have left and the reasons why. But that's all I have. Oh, one last question. I have a fun question. You didn't answer this question. I know you heard me ask it, but if you had a magic wand that could change anything about the school, what would you change?
Oof. This is tough because I come from the perspective of a student that graduated from here. My siblings also graduated from here, and I also work here. So, I'm stuck between two. Can I have two?
It's right now is your world. We just live in it.
I
You
would
participate
say
in 2 focus groups, so I feel like she
yes.
gets the second one.
Thank you. I would say transportation for the Providence students. If we were able to kind of get that, I think it would make a lot of Providence families happy and feel very secure about, sending their students here. We do give them RIP tickets, which is, the public transportation, like bus pass that we provide for them, but it's not the same as being picked up by, a school bus and bringing them from, their bus stop to Blackstone. So I wish we can do that. And a building for ourselves that has, a gym and a concert hall or a theater hall, so we can kind of see the students using these spaces. That would be my 2 wishes, Jamie. If you can grant that, I would appreciate that.
I mean, I wish I could. Growing up in Pawtucket, we used to call Ripta Uncle Ripta. We used to call the bus Uncle Ripta. Wendy knows what I'm talking about, right? So so we definitely can resonate with the fact that, going from Providence, and even in Providence, having to take probably one bus to another bus in Providence, to another bus downtown, to a, you know what I mean? And then to Pawtucket, and then having to walk from maybe downtown Pawtucket. I'm not sure. Maybe there's, I definitely think there's a closer one, kind of.
There is a closer one right up the hill.
Next to St. Mary's, the old St. Mary's, or the one right down the street from Shea, right next to Shea.
Right.
Shea and yeah.
So no, I can imagine. And then they have to walk, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot.
It is. And when parents are nervous of sending their students through, public transportation, we have people that wait for them at the bus stop, and we walk down with them and make sure that they get to the school safely, and we just chat with them. So we also have that, but having our own transportation would be 100% amazing for the Providence students.
Yeah, well, we'll just dial up a magic school bus for you guys, and that one magic school bus will be able to pick up all of your kids, not just the ones in Providence, but every single child, right?
I think you need to dial up Mayor Pete down in DC and talk to him about the transportation in Providence.
That would be amazing.
Yes. Get a train coming up there.
Yes.
That's my magic wand for you.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Making
welcome.
note of it.
So we'll dial up one for you. We'll keep you updated on the progress of the magic school bus and see if we can.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's wonderful getting a chance to learn more about the school through your lens and through your perspective, especially as an alum. I always think that you can tell how like impactful a school is when their students that graduate decide to be board and also, come back and work for them. And so it's good to see that the mission full circle. So I appreciate you. Happy almost Friday, almost Friday.
2 more days.
And you have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
Best of luck
Bye.
today.
Yes. You too.
Bye.
All right. So Kylie and Carolyn, how are you guys doing?
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Let me just pull up my
Carolyn, you're on mute.
questions here.
I said, we're just twiddling our thumbs here in the month of May, you know, out of school, nothing to do.
It is absolutely nothing to do nowadays. Huh? All right, give me a second while I pull up the questions here. I'm in the office, so I'm operating from.
You don't have your nice mic.
I
set
don't
up
have my
for
nice
us?
mic set up. You know, my two screens at home that are like, you know, the laptop screen, and then my other, you know, big me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have that. I'm not even at my desk. I'm in one of these conference rooms with a big old TV that's above my head, and so my neck hurts. But we're gonna make this work. All right, so as I said before, I just wanted to make sure that we, you know, really spend our time having a conversation with you all, and you guys can, you know, continue to educate us on the school. I think it's important for our conversation with you all to be, you know, nice and paced, and you all feel like you have the time to just help educate us on more of what you all are doing. You know, later on we'll talk more about trends and things that we've seen, you know, throughout this experience. But again, just wanted to dedicate another hour to you all, to make sure that we're able to kind of get through this interview, and you guys can, you know, share as much as you guys need with us. All right. I think last time we ended on the evaluation process for you all. I think we're ready to move on from that and kind of talk more about the strategic planning. And so I know that you all have a strategic plan, as you guys have put it in the document submission. Can you talk more about the process for developing and implementing this strategic plan or school improvement plan?
So I guess I'm gonna start and let you guys know that we probably use some different, especially the last few years, we use some different language around this. In the past, I think we've done the traditional strategic plan. And the last time we did one that looked like a traditional strategic plan was when we were planning our expansion, which was at the beginning of this term. And so a lot of the goals around that was, of course, you know, planning for the hiring and changing positions. And we were like rewriting job descriptions and all of that kind of stuff. And although we grew within 2 years, you know, we doubled our size, which was crazy. And then we've been, you know, doing a lot of adjusting around how does that work. You know, 3 years into that, we started this work with the Bar Foundation. And so I'm going to say that in terms of the academic and frankly, a lot of the school climate goals for us, there really are the Bar Foundation plan and our annual, what do we call it, Kylene? Goals or whatever they're called in the Bar sheet. That is those are our strategic areas. I mean, they get more detailed than strategic, right? But they start out as a strategic. And so I guess I'm going to say that when we did our original strategic planning for our expansion, which I feel like we're still like completing some of that process, it was, you know, we actually had a consultant who helped us to, you know, work with the board and sort of talk with parents, talk to all the school constituencies, do focus groups, all of that kind of thing in order to build the plan so that we could expand. Like, because we even had questions like, oh, you know, a lot of us thought we want to just expand our high school, but we also asked the question, do we go to middle school? Yes, no, and maybe so, and different, right? So like we did a whole lot of work around that in order to get ready. And I would say every constituent in you know, our school community participated in that process, you know, and it feels like a long time ago because some of it started, you know, while we were preparing for it. But I think since that time, and I realize it now because some of the teachers that were in our very first year of expansion, right, are just now in their 5th year. So we did, you know, there was a lot, we were in it right before our last charter term. We were like on the press, you know, we were building it, but we were still like very deep in it between our 1st and 3rd year. And once we started doing a lot of the work once we got kind of stable, I guess, on certain things, by our 3rd year, it was a much less intensive process in some ways. And again, I think we really moved towards, you know, the bar work kind of told us, you know, really informed us. There was certain parts of it where it's like, well, this is how we want people to function, right? And so I'll let Kylene talk a little bit about that process and what that's looked like in everything from, you know, the board, every part of the school community being involved, and also our outside consultant that's happened, because this is all part of our strategic planning.
I kind of lost the thread. What was your question again, Jermaine?
So the question was like, what was the process in developing and implementing the strategic plan? So and just to kind of narrow it down a little bit, in the document submission, there's like strategic planning materials. And so I've seen different priorities around like academic and external learning, as well as like two-way communication, and like some of those things. And so just trying to see like what was the process in developing those priorities, and then like what is the process in actually like implementing those things, those priorities.
Right. So I think the way that the Bar Foundation grant has supported us has allowed us to do the work where I think more than ever, we have the input of every single constituency. We have regular input from every single constituency that we serve as to, number one, setting the priorities, number two, getting the work done, number three, reflecting on where we are, and coming up with sort of final, I don't want to call them final products, but some of the priorities have been actual products. Like I know some people have referenced the portrait of a graduate as a product that came out of this. Well, yeah, it's a pretty visual, but there's like probably 700 hours of work that went into the setup of that design thinking feedback loop, the multiple drafts, multiple conversations, what should be in it, what shouldn't be in it, how is it different than our habits of mind or our proficiency-based instructional system. So I think, you know, because we have all these different groups contributing toward the common strategic plan, which is the bar grant strategic plan, we have everyone weighing in, right? So the families have weighed in on the portrait of a graduate, the students have weighed in on the portrait of a graduate, the faculty and staff, the board, community members have weighed in on that and given feedback. So I feel like more than ever, because we've been able to set our own timeline, because we've been able to create structures for that feedback loop that work for our particular school environment, because we've been able to, you know, compensate people extra to do some of the, you know, like I compensated my art teacher to do the visual of the graphic, you know, the progress that we've made on our goals, the progress in our goals, making the process of establishing our goals, making progress on our goals, measuring that progress, and reflecting on how we're doing on that process have all been richer than ever. And I love that our strategic plan includes goals that really align with our mission and vision. First of all, ensuring that we have a rigorous instructional system at Blackstone, number one. Ensuring that our external learning structure is more organized and more integrated into our core curriculum. Ensuring that students have opportunities, multiple pathways for meeting our proficiencies to satisfy graduation requirements. So it's gone, things have gone in all sorts of different ways. Ensuring that, diversity, equity, inclusion is a foundational component of all of our strategic planning and design thinking. Ensuring that the participation of student voice and family voice is in every part of every decision that we make. So we've agreed upon these foundational priorities. We've agreed upon the goals. We've worked together in all different constituencies in all different ways to state those goals, make progress on those goals, and advance on those goals. For me, in my history at Blackstone, it's certainly been the best way that we've done strategic thinking and planning and moving forward. And I said this before, what we've been able to accomplish in less than 4 years during a global pandemic, I never could have imagined that we would have gotten that far. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah, and you talked about how you both of you guys talked about just the stakeholder engagement and like especially the development and the workings of the implementation. Is that the same cadence or progression that you use when you're evaluating whether or not the actual plan is successful and kind of addressing the needs that come out of that evaluation and the updates that you may need to do to the plan if necessary?
I don't know if I completely understand your question, Jermaine, but I will say that
maybe if I ask it, should I ask it in a different way?
No, let me answer what I think you're asking, and then you tell me if I'm wrong. Carol and I actually met with Courtney Jacobs, who is our, Great Schools Partnership consultant who's been working with us. And we actually looked at the plan that we had for this year with the Bar Foundation grant, and we were pretty astounded that we are absolutely on track with every facet of it. So, we are using that same feedback loop, not only to determine our goals, but determine where we are in our goals and if those goals are still the right goals. So I don't see any difference in those aspects of the process. Is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just seeing if you were using kind of like the same group of stakeholders to also.
Well, it also, everything bleeds into everything else, right? We say we have these distinct disparate goals, but they all inform each other, which has been, I know Carolyn referenced this yesterday. It's like a Jenga game, right? You can't talk about habits of work unless you talk about habits of mind and proficiencies. And if you move the habits of work out of there, what happens to these pieces in your assessment system that used to be based on those work habits and maybe aren't going to be? And we're still in that. I think Wendy asked the question, like, we're still in the transition phase of all of this. So, it's not like our goals are all built upon each other and work in concert together, which has been a little frustrating, right? Like, especially me, I'm very like, okay, what are we deciding? Let's plan and move forward and do this. But I've had to pull back and be way more patient because it's going to take a longer time for a lot of those decisions to be made, especially because a priority of ours has been to get all that different constituency feedback, not just once, multiple times. Just takes
a lot of things, right?
A lot longer. And then COVID, everything takes 3 times as long in COVID. So that's why we were pretty excited when we looked at the goals that we had set forth, that we're actually very absolutely on track with where we said we would be.
Yeah, with many things. I think one of the things that I just want to mention is that and I don't know if any of you guys have been in this, have done much with design thinking work, but this is the first time I've done intensive, strategic planning, but through a design thinking lens. And it's pretty maddening. It's great though. You get to some things that you never would have gotten to, I think, in doing a traditional strategic linear plan, right? Because it really makes you think about and consider things that, you know, that you might not have, or what they just, you wouldn't have. Yeah, sometimes it's just, I think when you're doing a traditional, like, oh, we're going to be there in 6 months and we'll have this, and this is why we know why. And with bringing in design thinking, it's sort of, you have to blow things up first before you can put them, and then you got to blow them, you know, then you think you got somewhere and then you blow them up a little more. But it's definitely extremely different than when we've done a traditional strategic plan. So part of what, you know, has been kind of impossible to do well in the last couple of years has been to sort of merge the two things well for me, in a way that someone like you could take a look at and go, oh yeah, I see, you know, the whole thing. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And I've been doing strategic planning and plans for a long, long time, but it just doesn't look like this process. And as Kylene said, it's very intensive. And I feel like I've never felt more strategic, actually, than us doing this process. You know what I'm saying? Because we do have to function while we're working on the design part. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And transitioning to our next question.
Oh, I actually wanted to just answer Wendy too. I just saw her chat.
Oh, yep.
We're not part of XQ because actually the state and the Bar Foundation agreed that we were already doing XQ. We had already been doing it for a couple of years, 3 years, but when that process happened, and I think Bar, you know, they talked to each other too. So yeah, it started.
And still thinking about like this, like overall under the umbrella of strategic planning, what would you say are the school's areas of strength? And you know, I think, you know, Colleen kind of helped us, you know, really stay grounded in the reality that like not everything is going to be like the greatest thing, right? There's going to be some areas of strengths. There's also going to be some areas of growth. And so what would you guys kind of classify as far as, you know, under your planning, your strategic planning, what are some areas of strengths for the school? And then also what are maybe like, what is like the one like high level area of growth for the school?
I'll start with the area of growth. I feel like math is always an area of growth for us. I feel like every time there's a new state assessment, we have to revisit our math programming. But we have a great math department who is working really hard and in a very deliberate, particular way to address the math needs that we have at our school. I think it's really interesting that, you know, our departments are working in departments to, you know, align the Common Core standards to our power standards, proficiencies, assessment system, etc. And they're all at different places. And math is probably less advanced in that process, because they're really taking their time, because we have to get it right. They've made some really bold decisions that I totally agree with and support to retool the math progression for our math curriculum. And that's one step in the right direction. So I think, you know, we've had a math issue before. We have a math issue now. We're doing our best to address it. And it's not just something that you can throw resources at. You know, I think all of our math classrooms at 9th and 10th grade levels have at least one additional certified math teacher in them, supporting students, supporting teachers. That's not enough. So it's a combination of interventions, it's a combination of continual examination of what's being taught where, who's teaching what, scope and sequence, pacing, moving courses around that are taught at different grade levels, adding interventions upon our existing interventions. So I think for me, that's an area of focus, working with the math department on helping them determine, what the best course of action is. In terms of successes, I think that our incredibly strong school culture helps all of our successes happen because of what I referenced to you all yesterday about, feeling like a family. Students feel comfortable here to succeed, fail, take risks, etc., which leads to our great outcomes with the post-secondary plans for our students. Another thing that we haven't talked about at all is our teaching staff. Teachers don't leave here, and that's a change from a lot of other school districts. And I think that's a testament to, no matter how hard the work is and how many hours people are working, they don't want to work anywhere else. Unless we had a big year a couple of years ago when we had 5 teachers leave, and it was horrible, but they all left because they moved out of the area. 4 moved out of the area, 3 to teach in other states, and one went to grad school and 1 retired. And I feel like that's such a strong component of our programming because we all have the historical knowledge and the commitment to mission and vision. And we work together as a highly functioning team. Is it perfect? No. Do we have disputes and disagreements? Of course, but we have faculty and staff norms that help us talk about those and help us continually improve. We talk about strategic planning, right? Honestly, I don't need a piece of paper guiding my work to make Blackstone a better place. It's just part of our DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, we have one and we're supposed to, and we always do, but sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we're working on this big thing. That's actually not in the strategic plan. We're just doing it because it's important. Let's add it. And just it's like when I put stuff on my to-do list that I've already done so I can check it off, you feel good that you're making.
I do that all the time. Just so I can see something crossed off. Yeah.
Oh, that was done. I didn't even know I had to.
I write things on after I've already done them.
Yeah,
me too. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Crap, why isn't that on the list?
Yeah. Especially when you have one of those days where you're at the end of the day and you're like, what did I get done? So,
right. I got this done. I got that done. Yeah.
Jermaine,
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Can I ask a follow-up to Colleen before Carolyn goes?
For sure.
I actually have 2 follow-ups, one on the strength and one on the growth. On the strength, I'm just curious, is your teacher pay commensurate, is it close to what this district pay is around you?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Not that is a reason.
Better than many around us.
Yeah, it's better than many.
You've been able to come closer. Okay.
Yep.
Great. And also just around the area for growth, I understand everything that you're saying around math and what you're doing. Where was the gap, or where did you run into problems initially? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to get, math is hard, especially high school math, but it sounds like you've been kind of trudging through the math world for a little while. And I'm just curious if there was a tipping point or a place that you identified initially that I don't know, is that making sense?
Well,
or is it always been kind of the pacing, the scope and sequence? Has it just been kind of what you've described over time? I didn't know if there was a bad year, you know what I mean? Where and you really identified this is not working. Now we need to start slowly fixing something, or you know what I mean?
Yep, that's a great question, Megan.
Okay.
I think the frustration is that a lot of our 9th graders come in and they don't know their multiplication tables, right? So a lot of it is just the foundational, numbers and operations from the Common Core that our kids just don't have it. They don't know their multiplication tables.
Yeah.
don't know them, and you're missing your math brain is missing out on a whole set of things that are going to take, like, you have to learn those. So I think there's also, a lot of stigma associated with that. And we also, the SAT is different than it used to be when, I took it a billion years ago. And the fact that we just this year, we have retooled our geometry class to be a geometry statistics class, because that reflects what's on the the PSAT and the SAT. And now that used to be a 10th grade class. Next year, it's going to be a 9th grade class. So these are the big changes that we're making. Yeah, in part so that our students are better equipped to perform at a higher level on the PSAT and SAT, but also because that, the data and statistics piece, you see it in the reading section on the SAT. You see it in the real world examples that, are being asked of students in all of their classes. So I think for us, it's the numbers and operations continues to be an enormous struggle for a huge section, a huge swath of our students. And, I think I said, or Carolyn said yesterday that, we get students from over 20 middle schools, from like private schools to religious schools to high performing charter schools to low performing public schools. And the difference in the levels of our students coming in 9th grade, especially in terms of math, is eye popping. So, how many interventions can you throw? Like, you can throw 100 interventions at a struggling math student, but if they don't know their multiplication tables and they don't have the motivation and the place to memorize them so that they can function in a math world, those interventions aren't going to work.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It totally answers my question.
I mean, I could go on and on this because I've tried to. It's been years. You just try to figure it out, and then a new form of the same problem. It's a new form of the same problem presenting itself. It's just revealing itself differently on a different state assessment.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I knew it was something like that. I didn't want to make assumptions. So thanks. Okay.
And I just want to add, Megan, just to add on a little to that, is that this is the first time we're feeling like we have a state assessment for high school in Rhode Island that's actually aligned to the standards and at the specific that we're going to hopefully stick with, because we've been through a lot of, Kylie, I think this is at least our 4th different state test, maybe 5th, but they've also at times changed grade levels. And then the standards would change, right? And so I think that part of what our cross-curricular work is also trying to address is, as Kylene suggested, it's part, using data, using math and whatever, getting kids excited or wanting to be participating. So one of the issues with like starting with Algebra 1, can often be there's no place to connect, right? It's probably a big challenge, like even for the 9th grade team would be like, how are we incorporating the algebra into this, interdisciplinary project? Whereas if it's even geometry or stats, it's like there's a lot more jumping off points. So I think in any challenge that you have academically, you're looking at the whole picture too, right? It's not just about math. And I will say that statewide, this has been a challenge in Rhode Island. So it's, and even with, the kneecap, we were starting to figure some stuff out with the kneecap. In fact, we were at or above state average. The only urban high school ever did that for 3 years in a row. And then they changed the test. But they did let everybody have extended time when they did that. And they did, and that doesn't work the same way with SAT. And so again, we're back to some other challenges. And I think that, it's, it's math. Jermaine, I just wanted to answer your question a little from an sort of looking at operations and overall school management and things like
Yeah.
that in terms of
the strengths and
yeah, and so I want to say this, probably for me, it's been an ongoing strength that we have people that are able to function in multiple roles, or like stretch them, or be learners in ways that with Eileen and I particularly, but it's also been an ongoing challenge to be able to figure out as we've grown and as we've wanted to make things work more efficiently. And I think now that we're in a phase of like, how can we get this place optimal for the next management team, whenever that happens? That's sort of where I see the ongoing challenge. And it's, for me, it's there every day. I think about that kind of strategic stuff. I don't solve it at all necessarily. It doesn't mean I do. In fact, this year was pretty frustrating because there was some things that there were people I was supposed to hire. I had a director of operations who was on maternity leave and then had to leave, like in the winter. And I haven't, and we've replaced part of the position, but not the whole position. And so like it, I think part of the, so who does that work when we don't have it, right? Who fills in those gaps? And then I think another challenge for us this year that happened was that when we got the, as the funding, which was great to support us to be able to function, well, we also had to hire a bunch of people and train them and supervise them in a way that was like, again, who's doing that? Because, right. So, and try to, keep moving. So I think for me, an ongoing strategic planning challenge is just that whole thing of staying strategic while you've got the moving vehicle, while you're kind of on the train, jumping on the train, and then, which is for most organizations, right? It's always the challenge of like, and then what happens when suddenly somebody at the General Assembly decides to pass a law or a regulation that you suddenly have to do some big operation around, right? So that's sort of our normal life, right? We have that all the time happening, and I think we respond to it really well. But those are the kind of things that get in the way of having really neat. Like, I just remember when I was more in like the nonprofit realm before I was in the, like those, and I have to say I have less fiscal challenges in this realm, but I had many more fiscal challenges because you weren't getting that guaranteed income, right? That we can all complain about our budgets, but the fact is, in other nonprofits, you don't, it's just not how it's working. You often don't have that kind of funding stream. But what wasn't as much of a challenge was the external surprise demands that kind of compile that aren't funded often, right? So, so I think, that's sort of where I see it on a more bigger sort of an organizational level. I agree with everything Kylene said on the, with the other parts of it.
Yeah, thank you. That both perspectives are definitely necessary, and I apologize for the light show in the background, like going off and on. It's one of those rooms where if you're sitting down and you're engaged, then the light goes off, and then slight movement light goes back on. So there's a little bit of a light show in the background. Okay, great. Thank you for that. We're going to conclude that portion of like the strategic planning and kind of move into the school environment questions. And many of our questions here, I believe, has already been, answered through families, different folks in office. And I think probably the main question that I want to ask, and it could just be a reminder, I know that you guys have like school climate coordinators and different people that work to support students. and I know that Carolyn, you said that, I know both of you guys do, school behavior. But if it had to fall under like a bucket, is it more so you, Carolyn, or is it like equally divided between
So
you
I
two?
think school climate does go, is different than discipline, right? So I mean, there's different parts of this. So you met with the student support team, and generally speaking, that's who, I am supervising that realm, but it doesn't mean that Kylene's not also, because she might have some day-to-day things that she's got to deal with. So I think you met Maria Silva, and she's like our school climate coordinator, which is a fancy name of saying discipline coordinator without putting the negative first, right?
Right.
So, she's the day-to-day go-to, like keeping the data together, dealing with making sure a situation was covered, thinking about preventative strategies that we could do for certain situations that are emerging. I will
So
also.
is she like the owner of the proactive and the reactive strategies?
So yes, except I would say that's owned in a much bigger way in our, like it's something that she doesn't define that. I think that work's been defined and been pretty consistently the same since we opened the doors, which was we started with an approach that we call discipline with dignity. I mean, that's it's not a canned program. It's an approach which, really looks at every student in a way that's respectful and that is, positive. But it also, means that you train all the adults in terms of their interactions. So that's
one thing, Carolyn. Yes, Maria is, has the title, and that's her primary job function. But for example, we have, over the last several years adopted or still working to adopt a restorative justice model. And like Maria can't be the restorative justice isn't going to work if there's only one person at your school doing it. So, classroom teachers have been trained, students have been trained, students have trained other students, classroom teachers have trained other classroom teachers. So, just like everything we do, it's a team approach.
And I think, sorry.
Just to kind of like narrow in a little bit. Like, so for instance, I served as a dean of school culture, and so like as a dean of school culture, even though it was everyone's responsibility to add to the climate of the school. It was kind of my job to make sure that I lead staff and I lead students and families, kind of in working with the principal to create strategies in which proactively, we would make sure that, cultural wise, the school was in a great place, as well as, what are some strategies even that teachers can take if they find themselves in a situation where they have to be reactive, right? And so is Maria kind of like?
So that's, let me finish, because I didn't get to really tell you about the other. So I would say it's probably, I haven't seen, I have to say this, because we purposely designed a student support team that you met with, right? And as Kylene described, we've always infused a lot of training throughout the school. I would say that, well, it's Maria's, much of the day-to-day is Maria's realm. I would say that the strategy and the sort of responding to and kind of saying it, so like, I'll give you a, for instance, it is a bigger group. That would include, so Kylene and I would be convening, like when we grew, right, from suddenly, and we brought in a bunch of new 10th kids to the 10th grade who hadn't been through our 9th grade during this 1 year growth. It was crazy, right? Because we went from this lovely school culture. Everything was like, we hadn't had, I don't even, anything close to a fight, and we couldn't remember when, which is like, not normal, but like it really had gotten ridiculously, calm culture. And even though we had planned for that change, like all over the place, then the kids come, right? So they wreck your plans, your best laid, your very well-informed plans that everybody waited on plans. Okay, and so the school's blowing up. So what happens? Is that on Maria to come up with the solution? No, that's on maybe Maria to be like, oh, if we're not noticing or alarm bells aren't going off, then it's on Maria to make sure that alarm bells are going off for Kylie and I. But then we convene a group, and that's what we did, right? So, and I think student support had a lot to do with it. So I know you met with Heather Rayum, for instance, who's got a ton of expertise in social emotional learning. So one component, and somebody like Beth Thurber, who, has been doing this kind of work for years, right? In other schools besides this and in mental health settings. And so it's from all that informed knowledge that you're putting together a plan, right? When you need it. So I only bring it up and sort of tease it out that way, is that I feel like schools need to be able to have positions function. Like we're now a 350 student school, high school only, which might be very different from how you would have a position if we were an 800 student school, right? And no matter what grades. Okay, so I guess that's why I wanted to explain it in that way.
No, yeah, and that makes sense. Like there are some schools that definitely have that collective approach, and there's some schools that say, hey, we're gonna take a collective approach, but like this is the go-to person. And so what I'm getting is that even with the choice to do have more of a restorative justice lens and practices implemented in your school culture and the processes that come with that, it was like a team. It was that even that decision in itself was a group decision that like the students, basically the student support team or member.
Well, but it actually wasn't just the student, it was much more expansive. And I will say that part of the issue is that our issue, or I guess just that might make us different from some other schools, is that our foundation, like people like Kylene and I had been trained in victim offender and parent-child mediation. So like we did that as part of our work. And so whether Kylene was a teacher or she was whatever, and not just Kylene, but like some of our teachers, the same thing. So people, so all along there was that kind of mindset that this is part of where we see your role as a teacher. Certainly, I think when we got more and more staff too, we realized, oh, people may not be all coming on board. And if we didn't provide enough depth of training, that's where restorative was, was happening. And it was a perfect way to get the school culture back by sort of training people throughout the school. Yeah.
Can I just make a couple of points if there's time? The class deans that we have at each grade level have also, their position originally was not to deal with student, quote, discipline, but they have been working with Maria and working as a team and working with me. And there's a student support team person assigned at each grade level as well. We're almost there to have a perfect, 1-to-1 ratio. But, I think that what we work hard to do in terms of school climate and student, discipline or behavior, I even hate using those terms, is what is the root of the behavior? The root of the behavior, if you can get to the root of the behavior, then you can address the behavior. So often the root of the behavior has to do with academics, right? A kid might come into a class, they don't understand the assignment, they're going to misbehave and, maybe try to get kicked out of class so they don't have to deal with the fact that they are having some confusion, right? So I think that it's not only a behavior piece, it's what is the root of the behavior? What can we do as a team to address it, both on the academic side and on the social emotional side, right? we may unearth that there's an issue going on in one of the kids' homes that we can actually have an impact on by having a family meeting or providing the family with some, some connections to resources. So it's, we are not the school where student behavior is divorced from academics or from what's going on outside the home. We are a school where we accept that those challenges and problems are real, and we do the work to unearth what they are so they can be addressed and the student can be successful.
Yeah, definitely. Because, all behavior is a form of communication, right? And it's a matter of, with that behavior, what is the student trying to communicate? And if we can figure that out, then we can definitely get to the root of the issue. And so I think it's great to hear that you guys approach it as a team, get many minds and many expertise to help make those decisions. And so when those decisions are made and when those plans are developed, is that team also kind of in charge of training like the rest of the staff, implementation, follow up on those things? Since the team is big, kind of how do you guys kind of delegate, or how do you guys navigate through kind of, the implementation of those practices?
I think it depends on the plan. So I think the student support team is actually, recently, one of the things that I gave up, I used to be there like at every meeting. I don't anymore. Heather runs that. So if there's something that, if there is something happening annually, or there's like something areas identified that have to do with that, I would say that one group, and Kylene identified the deans as another, or it might be a grade level team, right, thing. But one thing that happens is that they identify some things that need to happen, or that they think could help to enhance a situation, and then an implementation plan, which includes how are we going to know when it's not working or it's working. And so we've had a lot of discussions around, we've changed discipline policies, we've had students involved in that kind of stuff. We've had, but that's always part of the plan. And there's been times when Kylene or I had to be the ones who were like monitoring that. But like, I feel, at least from the student support end, I feel like Heather's doing a great job with like getting them to look at, and they do it anyway, is looking at globally, what are some things we could do school-wide. I feel like the teams do the same thing. And again, there's a little back and forth, but, and then there might be something Kylene or I see and we say, hey, who can help develop this?
Right. And so even within that group, they're like kind of some like internal leaders that just emerge depending on the.
Well, like Heather, for instance, doesn't really see students. So she has an expertise in evaluation. So it's kind of a natural fit. Yay, Heather. Yeah. You figure out how we're evaluating that. Right. And tell us what you're seeing. And she does it like I could never do it. So, because
No, that makes sense. We have about 10 minutes. And I'm looking through here. Like I said, we've done a lot. We've done a lot of these questions through your different teams. One thing though that I would love to hear about, and I think, and Kylene, I don't think your name was brought up in this process, but if you do engage in like exit interviews, feel free to share your perspective as well. But I know when we were asking Debbie about attrition rates and just the way how attrition is tracked and analyzed, she did mention, that you, Carolyn, you do exit interviews. Kylene, do you do exit interviews?
Does it. I don't, not me. Really.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
You're talking about students that are going to.
Yeah. Students who
Every student.
Yeah.
And so Kylene, can you tell me a little bit more about like exit interviews, and then also, you know, how does the board engage in, because Debbie said that you guys track it in Power School and all that other stuff, so you guys have the information there. How does the board engage with that information as well? Yeah, just want a little bit more detail from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of our attrition happens in the first like week of school when a student or family comes here, and no matter how much orientation they've had about what our school is like and if they've been able to visit or do our Spirit Summer program, you know, some students, it's, you know, we're very different from a traditional high school, and for some students it's just not for them. So I think that, you know, we traditionally have, I would say, even despite reaching out to our families 1 billion times over the summer, there's always like 3 to 5 kids who just don't show up on the first day of school. And we find out that they actually never really wanted to come. We just never heard from them, but, you know, we always hold out hope. So, so that said, when I think of, you know, I'll think of a family that 2 siblings came this year, 1 9th grader and 1 10th grader. And from the start, it was a challenge for the family. Part of the issue which challenged them was the mom had some questions about our COVID protocols, and she wasn't really okay with them. And we were like, well, it's what our COVID protocols are. And then there were some challenges that she had with some of the curriculum that was being taught. And she and I had a number of conversations. And then it was the next level of COVID protocols. And then the family had some issues that went on, and it had them, the children went to Florida, then they ended up moving. So she ended up transferring her kids out to Providence in March. And, you know, I had probably, 1,000 email exchanges, phone calls, text messages with her. So did the advisors of the 2 students. And, you know, for that family, it's probably one of the most unusual attritions that we've had in a long time, because there were lots of layers. But once I unearthed kind of the challenges that the family was experiencing, it became clear that it was just too much to deal with with our constant communication. Like, where are your kids? How can we support? Let's do this, let's do that. Because I think, we're intense, right? It's intense to be a student and family here at Blackstone. We ask a lot of our students and families, and that family, which was experiencing some unbelievable challenges at the time, like that level of intensity just didn't work. Even though we were providing all these supports for, one of the siblings was an IEP student. So, but other than that, the students, the families who choose to leave Blackstone often don't want to leave, right? Like, we just had a heartbreaking situation where a student, he knew his family was moving to East Providence, and we don't serve East Providence. And, it wasn't a senior. So they got a spot at Highlander, and they left. And the family was heartbroken, like crying, because they had to leave, but it was, a family decision. So, we have very, very low attrition. We do have some students who have transitioned to a GED program, or like a Job Corps program as they get toward the end, and their priorities change. And we always support that, right? Like, if that's the decision for the family, then that's the decision for the family. And we've helped them get into GED classes and help them do the application for Job Corps so they can get their GED or diploma in a different place. But we're always very transparent. I always ask, like, hey, is there anything that we could have done differently here to improve the experience for your child? And, I think that one family that I was talking about earlier probably had a long list of things that we could have done differently, but generally it's family circumstances or a move or things like that contribute to any attrition that we have.
Yeah. And does the board ever like engage in in conversations with you all about like analyzing how you guys analyze attrition, are they like up to date with that, whether it's like once a year, a couple of times
I mean, I guess the statistics for Blackstone are not like
Yeah, very
alarming.
low.
Do you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like if we
Right.
had, dozens of kids transferring out, halfway through 9th grade because they weren't getting their educational needs met, or it was a very violent school, or this or that, or this or that, then we would be having, conversations first with ourselves, like what the heck are we doing?
Yeah, right.
And with the board, but it's never been, the pattern of attrition at Blackstone is generally due to high levels of mobility among, and I will even say, I've had families say, okay, Kylene, we're moving from Pawtucket to CF. My kid can still go, right? Like they've actually said, I won't move to East Providence because I know you aren't allowed to serve East Providence. So,
Right.
We've actually had that transparent conversation with families before. Or I'm like, okay, move during your senior year, but stay in Rhode Island because we can still serve you, but we don't have to provide transportation, that whole, Rhode Island general law. So,
Right.
but the pattern, there is not a specific pattern that raises to the level of like, okay, the board has to intervene, or we have to provide that data to the board because of that pattern.
I will say that typically in June, we usually June, if we're not overwhelmed at that meeting for some reason, we're gonna we'll talk about the general admissions outlook, because they want to know, of course, right? And and so part of it is just kind of confirming that we haven't had issues with that, or like that has, it's more confirming, because I think the board knows that from the get-go, it was a strategy. Part of the reason we opened the school was that in Rhode Island at the time, you could sign your kid out of school at 16 with pretty easily. Your kid could even, like it was like nothing. And in fact, Joe McNamara, you probably remember Jermaine when he was a teacher at Shea, but he introduced legislation, I don't know, 10 years ago, so that you couldn't just like drop out, or like a school couldn't just say like, the parent come in, sign you out to do what, right? But from day one here, we wouldn't let people go without meeting with them. And, Kylene does it now, but we would be all over anybody, because, sometimes people are having a bad day, right? Or like there was an incident with the teacher and, oh, I'm going to leave this school, right? And so it's like, I mean, we just really would work on it. And there were legitimate reasons sometimes that even collectively would say, you know what, it does sound like your kid might be happier at Davies and they got in, and that might be a good decision, right? But sometimes that's, a family might come, or whoever it is, and just be like have a plan that's just not so great. But we would they can't get out of the place without meeting with us. They never could. Now there's a law that says you have to they can't just leave school, for that purpose, but we've just done it as a practice, taking it pretty seriously if someone's going to leave. And I think that's something the board's well aware of. And, and because we don't have, it's pretty rare to have kids leave, or it can be not a good fit, but it's typically not a fit because maybe it's that they're looking for, I didn't get into Davies the first time. This time I did, which is our vocational school, Megan, in the area. So it's like, this time I did. So that sounds like a plan.
I think this is a Megan interest question, but so is there there's not a waiver for enrollment if you're out of one of the 3 geographic regions that you serve?
No, we sort of made it part of our charter. It was our choice. Because there were no charter high schools to serve when we opened. There was no small high schools to serve Pawtucket and Central Falls. And we felt like, God, we're going to be so small as it is. And then Providence too. So it's like our need is so great in our area, particularly you know, there's just not enough choice in the communities for high school in Central Falls or Pawtucket. So we felt like we don't really want, I mean, I think,
You wanted
yeah,
to
doing a
commit to
waiver, the
flexibility.
problem, it would be great if you could do a waiver, like if a family moved to East Providence, but then I
Yeah.
think the school districts would have to have that same ability and
Yeah.
open a can of worms, right, Jermaine? Like, don't
So
bring.
you'd have to be a
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
statewide, you'd
Oh,
have to
yeah.
be a statewide catchment area in order to do that.
Yeah, it's been a big Rhode Island, you know, Rhode Island. It's
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And
residents.
there's a charter,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a charter middle school in Central Falls, right?
Yes, and so segue and yeah, that and
Okay,
segue,
gotcha.
you know, and so, you know, most of the charters that end in 8th grade that serve these, you know, apply, like they have every kid apply to us, for
Like
instance,
their whole
because
8th grade class will apply.
yeah,
Mhm.
because, you know, and that wasn't always there, but yeah, so that's a natural, and then all the, you know, the others as well. So
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Jermaine, just, I need a little Rhode Island education there for 30
No,
seconds.
I mean, no, that makes sense.
But it-
Carolyn, we did the same thing in Boston when I was doing high school placement. We had all of our students apply to every single charter school, and if they weren't applying to parochial school or any independent school setup.
Which I will say, you know, Segway always does that. Segway's in Central Falls, Megan.
Yeah,
And there was one year where, you know, I think the luck of the draw, I think we accepted like 25 Segway kids, but then 12 of them ended up refusing our offer of admission. So it just, you know, because they got into different other, you know, Davies or whatever other
Different
places they wanted to
options.
go. So, you know, sometimes it works. It's a little frustrating, you know, the system isn't, you know, we're all each different schools. So,
yeah,
but I get it.
yeah. Well, and good for them for making options available to them. That was a terrible sentence, but you know what I was getting at. So,
All right. Okay, so last question I have for you all. Is the same last question I've had for a lot of our focus groups. If you had a magic wand, and you had to change anything about the school, what would that one thing be? And like I told the kids, can't be uniforms or food or any quick cop out, right? Something that you would really want on your wish list. What would it be?
just one.
I mean, if you want to do two, you know what? Because you all are the school leaders and y'all organized the Zoom and the people. We'll give you guys a little bit of privilege here and give you guys about two or so if you guys care to share.
I think for me, I think the students and the staff probably said this as well, but you know, we have a nice former warehouse building, which used to be a bakery distribution center and a gun shop, by the way. An early version of our school's name was going to be Country Kitchen and Ammo because it was
That was our AKA name. Yeah.
Right. But you know, I would love to have more space to do all the amazing things that we want to do, right? Like I'm in a singing group, and I would love, I'm actually thinking, Carol, and I haven't told you this, I think I might want to run a choir next year.
Nice.
I've been waiting for it.
Well, like I wish we had a big, you know, music room and all these instruments, and I wish we had a big gym with weights and a basketball court and a pool, and I wish we had a giant stage with the drapes that hang down, those red velvet drapes with lighting and, you know, and marquee. So, you know, for me, it's like we're crammed in here. And, you know, one of the challenges to safely reopening for COVID, that some other school, you know, like Pontiac High School can throw some tents up, and like that high school is the biggest place I've ever been in. There's so much space, and, you know, to be able to, you know, have an outdoor classroom or, you know, do that. So I think that would be my dream, to just have more room to have breakouts and a lounge for the, like a lounge for the kids and that would be my dream, because I think we're a great school. Am I biased? Definitely, but
You should be.
I think we're a great school that's continually looking to improve, and that will never stop even after I leave and Carolyn leaves, and it's 50 years down the road because it's in our DNA. But it would be nice to be able to spread out a little more and, use some of our funding to put into resources like that, because, our kids, are there kids out there who would love to learn to play the violin? Probably, but they've never held a violin. So let's get some violins. Let's get a violin teacher and get that going, because, there are other opportunities that our kids could take advantage of, but they just haven't had the exposure. And part of that is like, they never went to a school that had violins and a violin teacher, and they're still not. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Also a dorm. I would love to have a dorm, because we have students who are homeless and students who live in unsafe environments. So part of the space would also be a dormitory.
It's really good. That's a first. That's very thoughtful. That's the
We
first.
talked about it. It's our Oprah plan. I don't know. It was our Oprah plan, we used to say. Yeah.
That is a first. All the schools that in all of the groups that we've asked this question, that's a first. It's very thoughtful.
Well, the issue is though, I think we ultimately realized was like someone was going to have to stay in the dorms. Like that was the only, like, except who we hiring for that job, right? So, but
Yeah.
I mean, it just is the case that I think when we realized that we had a lot of kids that something like Job Corps made sense, because they just the home situation was so dysfunctional or just not right, not working, that that would help, right? Seriously. So I also would love to see an amazing physical plant, and one where there was just lots of open space to explore. I also am someone that, definitely comes from or embraces the more left-wing side of the unschooling tradition, I will say. So in my ideal world, matching that would be that all of our learning practically would be happening through experientially, and would be tied to real community, real community things. We do as much of that as we can. We're working on like expanding that, but I think that we're a public school, and there's been so many rules that you have to, right? There's so many big layers that you have to respond to, that I do feel like some of our dream and vision got a little killed along the way. Mm-hmm. So I will say that if somebody just said, take away all these layers of regulation, and we could actually have kids learn in a much more experiential way, and take away the grades, and take the not just grade, but like grade levels. I mean, we actually started with that concept, right? We had like level 1, level 2s, there was a lot of that stuff. So I guess in addition to the building, it would be a place that doesn't look much like a regular school, and we have the luxury of that. So for now, we're going to work on as much space at the new soccer stadium that's getting built behind us as we can possibly get out of them. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, team. Well, thank you for engaging us in this interview. Definitely felt that it was worth the time, the extra time to sit down and chat and just learn more, context. like I said, the team did a great job of kind of answering a lot of these questions for us. And it was just good to kind of hear you all walk us through some of these processes as well, and give us some added detail. Right now, as it sits in the calendar, we're scheduled to get back together at 2. We want to keep that for the wrap up. So I just want to confirm that we're going to keep that time. I know there was some talks yesterday about moving that time. We're going to keep that time at 2, from 2 to 3. I don't think we'll need the whole hour, but we want to spend that time kind of wrapping up, and then also kind of touching upon next steps, because from my understanding, you guys are interested in the fall, like in-person, walking through the school, observing classrooms type thing, or whatever. I know that we talked about it before. I just don't know if that's something that you all are interested in, but we can talk about that during the wrap up and kind of confirm that, and then talk about how we can get that on the books for next fall, if that's what you all want to do.
Great.
I'm
All right.
interested if you'll have me.
But I will come from Colorado.
Definitely.
All right, so yeah, let's break and then reconvene at 2. Ride team, let's get together at 11:50.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
See you
Thank you.
soon.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Bye.
Bye.